Who's heard of Count Dracula, Van Helsing, Transylvania, Velkan? Oh, not familiar with that last name? Well, Velkan Valerious, going by the alias of the Wolfman, is a character from the movie Van Helsing, specifically one of the side characters. His is a story that speaks of sibling love, tragedy, desperation, and grief. Velkan was a temporary werewolf until a specific period of time, his life intertwined with those of Van Helsing, his sister Anna, and the terrifying Count Dracula. He even served the Count for some time before his untimely death. He said goodbye to his sister, his last act to her before leaving this world. But what happened? How did he become a werewolf? And what did he have to do with Van Helsing and Dracula? We'll be exploring all that and more today, so get your popcorn and your tissues ready. This will be an emotional roller coaster ride. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
His only son, Prince Velkan, and his daughter, Princess Anna.
Who is Velkan? Velkan Valerious, or more specifically, Prince Velkan Valerius, was a character from the 2004 movie Van Helsing. This movie depicted the story of the legendary vampire hunter and his history with the vampire count, adding in characters from the church and natives from Transylvania, including the Valerius family. Velkan was the last of the Valerius family, including his sister Anna, and they had generations worth of beef with Count Dracula. This included a curse, separation, and a desperate attempt to maintain sanity on his part. Velkan was extremely loyal to his sister and his family's cause, even going as bait to lure out the werewolf that was working for Dracula. How is he connected to Count Dracula? One of the Valerius ancestors, the man they call Valerius the Elder, made a vow that he and his descendants would kill Dracula, damning their souls to purgatory if they fail. If all their descendants were killed before Dracula was dead, this would also mark their failure. This vow tied itself to their family for generations, centuries worth of Valerius dying in the hands of Dracula in an effort to break the curse. It is only later that we find out that the very man they are trying to kill is, in fact, one of their earliest ancestors, and the son of the very man who made the vow. Punished for having a sinner as a son, Dracula, on the other hand, was desperate to finish off the Valerius bloodline out of spite and to make sure the vow his father made to kill him backfired, and they're pushed into purgatory permanently. So, technically, Velkan is the direct descendant and one of those responsible for killing Dracula. Early life. Velkan was a considerate and protective brother of Anna. He was responsible for her after their father died a year before their active pursuits began. Both of them were extremely close. Their sibling bond, one that made others green with envy. Velkan aspired to end Dracula and free their family from the curse posed on them by the gods because of Dracula. He was a hero-coded man, never hesitating to put himself in danger for his sister and his cause. As stated earlier, we first see Velkan putting himself as bait to lure out the gray werewolf that was under the bidding of Dracula at that moment. He only had two goals in life: kill Dracula and reunite his family in heaven. So, what happened? Well, you know how when the gods hate you, something or the other goes wrong? No matter how well you're prepared, that's pretty much what happened. Velkan was tied to a pillar, as planned, and the wolf came out to pretty much snatch and kill him. When the wolf got close, he escaped out of a slim gap and grabbed on the rope and was pulled up again, as planned. What wasn't planned, you ask? Well, the rope getting stuck in the middle, snagging in the pulley, leaving him close enough to get scratched by the wolf. Anna's later involvement in an effort to save him had Velkan rush the plan. The rushed noise got the werewolf's attention, turning to Anna with a growl and lunging for her. However, cutting the rope had opened a trapdoor right under him within seconds, and the werewolf fell right through and down the hole. Moments later, the wolf was pulled up in a large metal cage. Velkan pulled out his gun and aimed at the wolf, ready to pump the beast full of silver. However, the pace was too fast, and he was hit by the cage in full force, causing him to drop his gun in the process. Before the wolf could gut him, Velkan flipped off the cage and into a nearby tree as the wolf was hung up in the air. The cage immediately had him in chains. Velkan was in the tree, and the rest of the hunting party aimed and began shooting. However, as common knowledge as it is, normal bullets do nothing to werewolf, so it was somewhat of a waste. While they did hit the werewolf, it didn't do anything but made it more and more restless and antsy. While it struggled in its chain, Velkan called for his gun, and Anna immediately went to work, telling the other shooters that it had to be the silver bullet, because those were the only ones that worked against a werewolf. If you ask me, it would have been smarter to equip every one of the shooters with silver bullets, so that situations like this would be better fixed, if not avoided. The continuous rapid gunfire had the cage slowly fraying from its rope, one already hanging loose and breaking. Yet Velkan still had no gun in his hand. He called Anna to hurry, which, to her credit, she was. She finally found the gun in the forest cover, running to grab it, but the last rope to the cage frayed at that exact moment, the cage falling right where Anna would have been if Velkan hadn't yelled for her to move. The cage was bent and the door broke, allowing the werewolf to escape the cage. He focused on Anna and swiped at her, which she ducked and ran while yelling at the rest of the party to run. The werewolf tore a part of the cage off and ran after her, snarling and growling and ready to tear into her. Anna was a fair distance from the werewolf and about to escape his sights when she realized there was a ravine. She stopped immediately, not wanting to fall, and turned to see the wolf lunge for her. Velkan, being the supportive and protective older brother that he was, immediately shoved her and aimed, shooting the wolf. He landed a solid, critical hit on the werewolf, but the creature's momentum couldn't be stopped. It grabbed Velkan instead, tackling it, and the two of them went plunging into the water. So, that's it? We don't see him again? Not exactly. See, before Velkan could die, the werewolf had bitten him in the process. This pretty much meant that he was now a werewolf. That also meant he was now under Dracula's control, but he would still have control of his mind until his first full moon, and that too until the last chime of midnight. So he's considered dead, both to Anna and Van Helsing, who comes in later and realizes Velkan isn't there. But this isn't the end of his story. On the day Van Helsing and Anna met, Van Helsing had sprayed Anna in the face with a sleeping agent after failing to dissuade her from pursuing Dracula in the middle of the night. After Anna woke up, she was ready to beat up the hunter when she heard a noise in the middle of the night. It was coming from the weapons room, so she assumed it was Van Helsing. She barged in, only to hear nothing. There wasn't a sound, at least not a sign there was a person there. There was, however, a shrill noise coming from inside, something cold and eerie. Anna went inside with a lantern and a weapon, her steps cautious. After slowly following the noise, she was ready to swing when she found nothing, just an empty corridor and an open window. Biggest survival tip while in a huge mansion? In my opinion, never take an open window for granted. If a window opened or is open in the middle of the night, while living in a castle in a town like Transylvania, something's up and will always be up. And something was, because when she turned, she found water droplets on the floor, along with wet werewolf footprint. See? Told you there's something up. Anna slowly began to back away from the window, grabbing a gun from a box on the table and cocking it, ready to shoot. Once she did, she began walking around, slowly, quietly, her eyes peeled for anything. However, it was her ears that picked up something. Raindrop, falling rapidly into the room. This was obviously the creature she was looking for, because there were no holes for the rain to fall inside. The only explanation? The werewolf, staring at Anna as she looked up, and shot the thing before running. Cue the moon being covered by the clouds for a brief moment. This is important. Remember this. Once she was somewhere deeper inside the room, she found Velkan inside, standing right behind her. Her surprise turned to relief at finding her brother alive, and they had a tearful reunion before Velkan panicked and pushed her away gently, talking frantically. He told her he knew Dracula's secret, but before he could say anything, his senses were taken over by the new DNA, werewolf DNA. He backed away tearfully, told her to run, and, with the moonlight shining over him, shifted into a werewolf right then and there. Anna was heartbroken at the sight of her brother, but the werewolf was ready to lunge when Van Helsing, hearing the commotion, ran inside to Anna's aid. Not wanting to die, he jumped out of the window, shattering the glass in the process. Van Helsing tried to coax a response out of her, but she just stood there in shock and disbelief, not wanting to believe that her brother was one of the creatures they hunted together. This worried him even more. So he pulled out his gun and ran out and into the balcony, ready to shoot. But it was too late. Velkan had already jumped into the ravine, going back to Dracula's castle. Does that mean Velkan's working for Dracula now? Thankfully, not if he can help it. When Velkan had shifted into his werewolf form, under the influence of the curse, he went back to Dracula's castle. He jumped inside, and right in the center of the Count's lab, he ran out of energy, slowly regaining back his control of senses and humanity. While he was transforming back into Velkan, Dracula taunted him about being a new werewolf and how they were hard to control, knowing full well that his loyalty still ran with his sister and family legacy. Dracula had initially sent him to see who the new visitor was in Transylvania, the new visitor being Van Helsing, but he dared to see his sister. Velkan, now fully human again, scoffed and told him that Anna stayed out of this because he didn't tell her his secret. Dracula told him that he still had use for him, but Velkan retorted that he'd rather die than help him. One of my favorite quotes from this scene would have to be,
"Everyone who says that dies.
Honestly, comedy gold. Count Dracula then decided to take this opportunity to reveal a little something, a nugget of information that would probably rile him up even more. Velcan and Anna's father, the man who was missing a year ago, he was actually a shriveled corpse in their lab, a failed specimen for their experiment. Velcan was only able to recognize him because of the cross on his chain. In a justified fit of rage, he went in to attack the Count, but the Count only pushed him back into the Dorgi, his servants, stating that his father had proven useless, and he was only there because he could be better because of the werewolf venom in his blood. Velcan swore that, even though he failed, Anna wouldn't, and would kill him in his stead. These were his last words before he was strapped into the machine and sent up to the moon. Bad move if you ask me. Is that the end of his chapter? Oh no, not at all. Right around this time, Van Helsing and Anna had snuck their way into the castle. They split sometime later. Van Helsing was found and started talking to Dracula, while Anna went to try and save Velcan. She found the lab and tried to get in quietly, but was found by the Dwergi and had to fight her way up the lab, finding Velcan. Once she got up to the lab, she ran to Velcan, who was already weak from the constant electrocution. She promised to free him and began to unstrap him from the machine, but Velcan began to protest, telling her to leave him strapped and that she should run. Anna refused vehemently, telling him she was taking him home, but the moon decided to peek at that very moment, ruining her efforts. He grabbed her face, trying to push her away, his eyes changing colors, and Anna took that as her cue, pulling away from his grip and running. When Anna was running, she bumped into Van Helsing, who ran up to find her. He then grabbed her, shot a zipline, and started sliding down the zipline. However, for Velcan, it was too late. He was now a full-fledged werewolf, which meant the intruders had to die. We'll call him the Wolfman. The Wolfman jumped onto the line, intending to follow them down, but it broke. Van Helsing and Anna swung, causing them to fall onto the forest cover. But Velcan, again, fell into another ravine. Seriously, what is with werewolves and ravines? Is it some kind of sanctuary I'm not aware of? Please explain it to me in the comments, because I'm so confused at this point. So, did he die by drowning? No, of course not. He's fallen into so many ravines at this point, you could assume he was waterproof. No, he died in Van Helsing's hand. I know what you're thinking. Wow. After all that, he died by a bullet? Let me explain first. Dracula and her brides were after Frankenstein's monster. That monster was with Van Helsing and his gang, en route to Rome. Helsing, through a well-placed bomb with silver stakes and a fake carriage, managed to kill one of the brides. Afterwards, he met up with the real carriage that Anna was driving, and they celebrated for a brief moment before the Wolfman showed up. He lunged, and the two of them in the rider's seat jumped to the opposite sides of the carriage. This meant Anna was now hanging off a side of a cliff, and Van Helsing, well, his landing wasn't too great. Let's just say, with how fast the Transylvanian horses were going, his family jewels were at risk of being run over by the carriage wheel. Carl, hearing Anna's cry for help, had opened the door and was about to pull her up when Van Helsing also called for assistance. Frankenstein, who was chained up in the carriage, told him he could help. Carl, being the meek-hearted man he was, asked if he would kill him, to which the monster retorted only if he didn't hurry. Carl unlocked him and grabbed Anna, helping her back into the front, while Frankenstein grabbed the back of Van Helsing and tossed him next to her, like a rag doll, if I may say so myself. By then, there was no sign of the Wolfman, and they had treaded back into forest area, or a forest road, if you want to be more specific. Again, you'd think that was the end. Nope. The carriage caught on fire and the Wolfman growled again, trying to attack and not be caught on fire again. None of this was worth the carriage, so Van Helsing told them all to jump. First, Anna, then Carl and Frankenstein at the same time. Then, Van Helsing. Only this time, he jumped and twisted midair, pulling both his guns, and as the Wolfman tackled him, shot 2 silver bullets into the beast, killing him immediately. Velcan's death. In the morning, Anna roamed around the forest area, looking for the Wolfman, or more precisely, Velcan. She found him lying against a rock, then held him for a moment, until he was alive enough to identify her. He held her for a little longer, tears filling both of their eyes, until he shakily asked, no, pleaded her to forgive him. Before passing away peacefully in her arms, she said she would see him again, and pressed a teary kiss on his forehead. Marvelous verdict. So people, that's it. The story of Prince Velkan Valerious. If you ask me, I say he deserved better, so much better. He didn't have to die. No, sir. I cried at his death, let me tell you, and I will die on this hill that he deserved to live happily with Anna and his family. What do you think? And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.